Hey guys, Scott here. The whole concept of disconnecting or giving up on hook and stuff like that has been a hotly debated topic in the DBD community for a pretty long time, ever since they even introduced DC penalties to begin with. And there's always just been a very easy solution to all of this, just right there. But for some reason, it's just not really entered into the discussion. It's always, should we punish people from killing themselves on hook, or should we remove the DC penalty? Those are sort of the two sides of the argument there. The first side being that if we remove the ability to kill yourself on hook, well, then we have no options for the survivors to essentially give up early, ensuring that games will go on for as long as they're meant to. And the other side of the argument is, well, obviously there can be utterly miserable scenarios that people are put into. So people being able to not want to play those matches is overall better for the game's health, because keeping people in miserable scenarios makes them stop playing the game. And I understand the arguments coming from both sides, but there's always been the clear solution, and it's just to have a concede feature. That has always just been the main solution for all of this stuff. And I suggested this, like 3 or 4 years ago in my fake 7.0 patch, but it seems like at the time the developers thought it was
competitive brain nonsense.
So with that, I don't really understand why we don't revisit the idea of a concede feature, because not only is it not a competitive thing, in fact, it is the opposite of a competitive thing, because actual comp matches are custom games in which they don't need an auto give up or, tie or concede feature. We need something like that in your average match in order to make it something that players can actually benefit from. It would just be a simple thing. If the majority of players unanimously decide to give up on the match after a certain period of time, and past or before a certain amount of hook states, depending on who's calling the forfeit. I outlined this in the video I made a long time ago, but just some form of feature like that, it sort of answers both things. If a killer is playing super, super, super sweaty, and really all they want is to just win the match and nothing else matters, if the entire other team, after 5 minutes and a certain amount of effort put in, because there would be minimum time limits, if they decide to give up, well, then the killer gets that win. They get exactly what they wanted. Now, if the killer really just wants to bully the shit out of people and, slug them on the ground for 4 minutes and essentially just make the survivors miserable, then their opinions don't matter anyway. So it still is okay if the survivors want to get out of that match and the killer's upset because they don't get to play their match out now. It doesn't matter. You still get your win. You still get what you wanted. And the survivors don't have to sit in there into torturous scenarios. Now, obviously, there are people that give up way too easily too, and that's why there would be requirements for this. 1 minute loading into a Skull Merchant match, you wouldn't just have the option to give up. You still have to play for like a minimum of 5 minutes for that to actually be something that you can begin to give up on. But I think preventing those games that drag on for 20, 30, 40, 50 minutes, or games with players on either side, survivors torturing killers and clearly being better than the killer and just essentially trolling them with sabos and stuff for 20 minutes, stuff like that. All of these things, there should be the option to say, okay, fine, you win, just give up. I give up, just take it. And I don't understand what a possible downside to this could be. The only thing I could possibly see as being a downside is if you have a 4-man survive with friends, they automatically have the unanimous vote on the survivor side, so they can just vote to end the match. And the killer might not want that to happen. And that's why you would have to have like those minimum requirements in, because then, yeah, you could have a team of 4 load in versus Skull Merchant and say, hey, we're not playing against Skull Merchant, and Skull Merchant players would never get to play Dead by Daylight, which, in my opinion, I'm okay with that. But still, you have to understand there are people that like things that we don't like, and they still deserve to play at least a minimum amount of time. But if anything, if you have like a scenario where the devs see that 99.9% of players are conceding against the Skull Merchant at the bare minimum time, maybe the issue isn't with the players. Maybe there's something else going on there. It should actually show some pretty good patterns of what people find super problematic. I guarantee you're not going to find that same concede rate against, a fucking hillbilly or something like that. You're just not going to see it. So it can let the devs also know which killers are seen as more problematic, which survivor playstyles are seen as more problematic, things like that. So I think it's really about time we have a concede feature in the game. It is sort of a no-brainer. It solves the whole disconnect penalty removal or make it so you can't kill yourself on hook. It just basically is the best of both worlds. I don't know why we don't have something like that in the game. It's clearly not competitive brain nonsense. It would benefit the average player immensely. It would benefit the average enjoyment of a DBD match immensely. I don't know why we're not doing this. I straight up can't see the downsides anymore. So if you guys can think of any holes that it might not work or something like that, let me know. But other than that, yeah, I really think we should have a system like this by now. It's long overdue.